Thank you all for joining us today. For anybody new, we are HdK. We are a digital agency and we primarily work with arts and non-profit organisations, and we have two main offerings, which are the websites and the digital marketing. So leading today's session, we've got the digital marketing team, and we work across all of our clients' social media and digital marketing campaigns. So I'll just introduce myself first, and then I'll pass over to my colleagues to introduce themselves. So my name's Phoebe. I'm HdK's digital marketing manager, and I help our clients develop strategies. So the kind of like top line approach of how they want to market their campaigns. And I'll just pass over to Meg to introduce herself as well.
Hi everyone, I'm Meg. I am HdK's digital marketing coordinator. So I work with Phoebe and with Nicole, and I deliver all of the campaigns for our clients, along with some strategy and some reporting, things like that. I'll pass over to Nicole.
Hi everyone, I'm Nicole. I do digital marketing assisting towards Phoebe and Meg on the team. I help with the social media scheduling, social media captions and whatever needs to be done and helped with.
Thank you both, and you'll hear more from them both in a moment. But before we jump into it, I'm just going to talk you through today's session and what you can expect. I'm just going to mute everybody again. So sorry, just in case we have any feedback, it can be a bit distracting. Okay, great. I think that's everyone. So in today's session, because we work with a lot of different arts clients, we understand how important your audiences are in what you do. When we're delivering campaigns, we're constantly being asked, who are the target audiences for this? How can we reach them? And how can we show that we've reached them in our reporting? And there's a huge amount that we could talk about on all of those things, but first we're going to focus on how to reach your target audiences online. So during today's session, we're going to look at identifying your key platforms that your different target audiences are using, choosing your content to best engage with them, digital advertising to reach those people that you may not currently be reaching, email outreach to help you get in front of the different audiences of targeted organisations, and finally hashtags to get your content in front of the right people. So to open the session with identifying key platforms, I'm just going to hand over to Meg.
Thank you, Phoebe. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for coming today. It's great to see you all. Lots of familiar faces, or Zoom names rather, and lots of new people as well, which is great to see. So in this section, I will be outlining how to identify your audience on various platforms and also what to do once you've got this information. So if we move on, you're likely to start by asking yourself, who is my audience? And to work this out, there are three key things you can do. So the first, which is on the left-hand side, is to understand the platforms in general. From there, you'll want to move on to understanding your own accounts following on that platform. And lastly, as sort of a supplementary approach, what do my peers' audiences look like? So understanding your competitors or your peers in the field that you work in, what kind of following do they have? So once you've got an understanding of this, you can start to make informed decisions about the content you create and put out there. And I know Nicole will be covering this shortly. So jumping straight into it, let's outline some key platforms and who uses them. I'll just take this time to say that while gender and age are the main metrics we have to measure our demographics on social media platforms, these can be quite restrictive and binary, but we obviously do the best with the information we have. So I will whiz through some key differences between the platforms here, but this table will be included in the post-webinar material, which we will link in the chat at the end of the session. So don't worry about getting this all down. I'm not going to talk through everything on the slide here. But some important things to notice are that Facebook's younger audience are on the decline. So every age group over 30 is very much on the rise. Supposedly now the average Facebook user is around 40 years old. On Instagram and Twitter, the most populated user group is the 25 to 34 years age category. And on Twitter, unlike the other two, Facebook and Instagram, there are more male than female users. So if we go to the next slide, it's just a few more platforms here. So TikTok is obviously a platform that is exploding in popularity at the moment, with mostly female users between the ages of 16 and 24. And interestingly, LinkedIn and YouTube have the same gender split. Of course, they do very different things, but that's kind of general rundown of the kind of audiences you're going to find on these platforms. So now you will start to have a general understanding of the platforms. You'll want to be taking a look at your own following. So on Instagram, for example, under Insights, you'll be able to access basic information about your following. This includes a gender split, age groups, locations, and the times that your users are most active. So these key pieces of information, they allow you to make, like I said, informed decisions about when you want to post, what kind of language you want to use, kind of give you a rough guide to the kind of hashtag and other copy features that are likely to get you the most engagement. And moving on to the third point that we have is a peer analysis. So an important thing to do is to cross-check with other accounts. Check out your platforms, which platforms your competitors and peers are using. So for example, if you're a small art gallery, take a look at competitors of a similar size, maybe in the same area as you, as well as some big names like the National Portrait Gallery or the V&A. So you can ask yourself the following questions. What kind of following do they have? What are the common words in those followers' bios? What content of theirs gets the most engagement? And how can I tap into that audience? So aside from manually looking through their accounts on the native platforms themselves, you can use tools such as Follow a Wonk, which we really like. That's a personal favorite of mine. And we'll link that at the end of the webinar as well in the chat. I know this can all feel a little bit like amateur sleuthing, but it is all research and it's all going to help you understand your audience and maximize your impact. So let's put this into practice now. You've had a look at your platforms, you've had a look at your own account, you've had a look at some peer accounts. You're in a place to start creating some content to put out there. Again, Nicole is going to be covering this shortly, but let's just put what we've walked through into practice now. So imagine you're an immersive entertainment restaurant. Maybe you are, I don't know. And you are hosting a new drag event. So we're going to call it Drag Brunch Bonanza, which is a tongue twister. So after conducting your various audience analyses, you start putting together relevant and effective content to be reaching your target audiences on each platform. So the best way to do this is to identify a clear goal or a purpose for each post. So on Facebook, you know that you have an audience that is mostly between 35 and 44. They're interested in the arts, but they're unlikely to have engaged with drag specifically before. So on this platform, your goal might be to inform. So here we have a mock-up of a post that you might want to put out there. It's simple, you've got clear facts, a call to action to find out more, and an image that appeals to this target audience. This obviously is just a quick mock-up, and everything that you see on this slide and the next couple of slides, it's all available in the public domain, so it's something that everyone can kind of be making themselves. So on Instagram, on the other hand, you have a young audience. They're liberal, they're culturally engaged, and they want to be inspired. So it's likely that your audience on Instagram knows what drag is, maybe has been to a drag event in the past. So your goal on Instagram is to sell this particular event. Why this drag brunch? So here we have a mock-up of what might be on Instagram. So why is this drag brunch different from others? Are there any ticketing offers? So if people share this content to their stories, are they in with a chance of winning a free ticket? So in this example, we've got free Prosecco for the whole table. So you've got visually very aesthetic, lots of pink, bit of glitter. And you've got a clear call to people. You're clearly trying to communicate with the audience, knowing that they probably understand what you're trying to sell. They're probably already interested, and you're just trying to grab that attention. So on Twitter, you have an audience mostly in their 30s, they're mostly female. And after you do a bit of an analysis, you know that lots of words in your followers' bios include things like dance, music, and contemporary art. So they are likely to be interested in an entertainment-based event then, but they'll probably need a bit of convincing that drag is their thing. So in light of this, your main goal on Twitter might be to generate excitement. So your copy might look a bit like this. So we've got bold language generating intrigue. We've got visually striking copy, obviously super glittery. You've got a couple of emojis in there, a relevant hashtag, and a link. So as we can see, an audience analysis has enabled us to create clear and concise goals for communication on each platform. So I think the main takeaway really is that content shouldn't be regurgitated for the sake of it on all social media. Rather, you should consider which platform you are using, why you're using it, and what you want your post to achieve. So we've got a few things you can ask yourself. So one, what is my target audience on this platform? Next, you can say, what do I want to achieve with this specific post? And lastly, what do I know my audience are likely to engage with? So coming back to the flowchart then, I hope you'll see that we've covered the first 3 points here in discovering your audience. And we've begun to explore the bottom box, which is choosing your content. So speaking of which, I'm now going to hand over to Nicole, who'll be looking at this a bit more closely.
Thank you, Meg, for that beautiful intro into content. So I will be talking about choosing your content. So wherever you decide to post, the content you share will play a huge role in whether you're going to be able to successfully engage with your target audiences. We're going to talk you through some of the ways to generate content ideas with your audience in mind by looking at some key platforms. So firstly, Instagram. One way to choose your content is to gain a better understanding of what kinds of content your target audience is engaging with on each platform. Let's take Instagram, for example, and stick with the drag brunch bonanza to build on what Meg has shared so far. There are different kinds of accounts you can start to look at to understand what your audience is engaging with on Instagram. So such as popular British drag queens, existing drag events, food and brunches pages, and similarly marketed events. Have a look at those accounts and hashtags relating to those things to see what kind of content is getting the most engagement. To step away from this example for a moment, you can apply the same logic to a museum exhibition. Let's say you've got an exhibition coming up later in the year that promotes a niche art form by a historic painter. You can look at accounts and hashtags surrounding things like current art exhibitions, heritage organisations and other museums, popular art posts, and any posts about that niche. Note what kind of content are getting the most engagement and brainstorm how you can replicate the success in a meaningful way. Also, make sure to try out different functions of each platform. On Instagram, you can explore IG Reels, Stories, IGTV, and augmented filters. If you've been posting on a specific platform for a while, you can also look back at any relevant campaigns you've run with similar themes. Look at your insights to gain an understanding of what format works best in feed post, video, story, or something else. What did you use in the caption? Can you try the same thing again? What did people respond to about it? And read through the comments to try and understand what about the content people engaged with. Moving on, we'll be touching on Twitter now. As Meg has already touched on, people use Twitter for two main purposes: to gain quick information and to have conversations. Approaching this platform, you'll want to find out what conversations your target audience is having and make sure your organisation is either joining in or starting them. To do this, consider what the target audience's interests are. Then consider what themes in your campaign cross over with those interests and what conversations are being had around those topics, and how can you take part in that conversation. Identifying those interests. One of the first challenges is understanding what your content, your target audience is interested in, and there's plenty you can follow to start gaining more awareness. First, create a profile for each of your target audiences so you're able to say with confidence what they are and what they're not interested in. The audience agency's pen portraits are great for helping you get into more detail on this. They have segmented the UK population into 10 key profiles with insights into age, location, demographic, behaviour, interests, and more. For instance, if you've identified one of your target audiences as old arts lovers and your venue is in a suburban area, you can look at the pen portrait, trips and treats. This audience is well off and enjoys arts experiences as something to do with family for a bit of fun or for education. They tend to be interested in mainstream arts and popular culture and
I think you might be covering the microphone every now and then, so just to let you know.
Okay, thank you, Phoebe.
No worries, sorry to interrupt, carry on.
So going on to the next slide, finding the conversations. Once you know what your audience is interested in, you can start to follow accounts that cover those topics. Look at what kinds of content sparks the conversation. Is it a video, reshares from TikTok? Is it a meme following a specific format? First, get involved in those conversations by liking, commenting, and retweeting until you really understand how your audience works. Once you have a firm grasp of what they enjoy and how they interact, have a go at creating those conversations with yourself and make sure to use the right tools like hashtags to get them seen. But I'll come back to these later. If you start to see your target audience engaging with the content you're putting out, think about developing a content series that you can build over time, linking together multiple tweets and a common theme. The more you engage with your target audience, the more you'll be able to understand them. So going into some of these examples. So Vanishing Point created a thread, and I think threads are really good because you're able to carry on conversations like the examples shown on screen. Using polls as well will allow you to tap into the audience that enjoy participating in short form content, as well as putting questions out there in the simplest manner, just like the point have done here. And also visual assets like the one used by the Royal Opera House for World Ballet Day is also key, as 84% of consumers expect organisations to produce entertaining and helpful content experiences. Moving on to TikTok. The best performing TikToks are often ones that are easy to replicate by the masses or a spin-off of an existing trend. And it can feel intimidating as a platform, but it's one of the most accessible with the majority of content being far from polished. So how to approach it? Look at what other organizations are doing, or specifically what other organizations within your sector are doing. Identify which of their TikTok content is getting the most views and comments. And also look at the Discover page for inspiration. We'll be going into the examples that I've put together. For example, here are 3 different arts organizations using TikTok. The V&A chose to do a step-by-step TikTok, which is another big trend on TikTok. The Avant-Garde Dance chose to do a behind-the-scenes content. And also the Polka Theatre chose to do a before and after with their stage before and after building. These are all different trends, but effective to their page. So put yourself in their shoes. So if you've got a building or a venue, or you're doing a stage setup for a performance, try doing the same as Polka Theatre or Avant-Garde Dance with the BTS and before and afters. Whatever your organisation or campaign feels comfortable with, once you start playing on the platform, you'll feel much more comfortable creating the right kinds of content for your target audience. We recently did a webinar on how to use TikTok as an arts organisation. So if you want to learn more, we'll share the link at the end of the session. Until then, I'm going to hand it back over to Meg. So thank you.
Thanks, Nicole. Thank you. So I know this is quite a lot of information. So I'm going to take a little pause now. We're going to be looking at digital advertising now. So far, we've been looking at ways you can reach your target audiences organically or in a way that's unpaid. Of course, this is very important. It forms the basis of all of our campaigns and how we communicate on digital platforms. And these are really important. But another area that you might want to explore is digital advertising. So worldwide, digital ad spend has surged by 42% since pre-pandemic times, which is obviously pretty huge. And we can learn a great deal about our audiences by putting just a bit of money into our digital strategy. So at HdK at the moment, we're currently looking into creating bespoke bookable sessions, which will go into digital advertising more closely. And two of the most popular and influential advertising platforms are Google and Facebook ads. When you set up an ad on Google, your paid content will be placed in both the results of search engines and on non-search websites on desktop and mobile. I'm sure you've seen, if you search something on Google, your first 3 or 4 responses might say ad next to it. So that's targeting you because you're looking for something and you are most likely to engage with that content. When you place an ad on Facebook, however, your content is shown on Facebook feeds, on Facebook stories, as well as Instagram feeds and stories as well. So Facebook ads can actually offer more nuanced targeting and more powerful tracking insights than Google ads can. So if you're picking between the two, these are all just things to take into consideration. So let's go back to our drag brunch bonanza. Let's say your campaign is going really well. You've put out all the content on your social media platforms, but you do have a little bit of extra budget to put towards some targeted advertising. In this instance, we're going to say you're using Facebook. So you'll first want to establish what audience you want to reach via this advertising. And when designing and creating an ads audience, you'll want to think about which people are the most likely to engage with the content, click through to the website, and ultimately book a ticket. So factors affecting this will be the user's location, the user's interests, the user's age, and the user's gender. And these are all things you can pick to make a tailored and bespoke audience. So for this campaign, you identify 2 key groups to target. You've got local brunch spot seekers and local performance enthusiasts. So to get to that point, you've sort of got your event, it's a drag brunch, and you've separated it into, right, people who like drag, essentially, and people who like brunch. It's obviously a bit more nuanced than that, but that's kind of a good way to go by separating your audience groups. So for both audience groups, you'll want people to be within a fairly short traveling distance to your venue. So you're going to pick a few towns or areas nearby. Let's say Battersea, Wandsworth, Clapham, Putney and Brixton. And that's going to be the same for both groups. It's a boozy event, so you want to target over 18s only, so perhaps over 21s. So our age ranges might be between 21 and 50. Again, this is for both audiences. So where your audiences differ, however, is in their interests. So for local brunch spot seekers, you'll want to identify some keywords and phrases relevant to the brunch aspect of the event. So this might include brunch, eating out, restaurants, food, drink, Prosecco, champagne. For the second group, however, local performance enthusiasts, you'll want to pick out different interest keywords. So these might include things like RuPaul's Drag Race, drag show, performance, cabaret, cocktails, live performance, and live show. So fantastic, you've got 2 audiences set up to target people who are likely to be interested in your event. So your ads are now live and the results are rolling in. You've put half of your budget into each group. What you start to notice is that the local performance enthusiasts are clicking through to your website much more than the local brunch spot seekers. So at this stage, you are able to pause the campaign and channel the remainder of your budget into your most impactful audience. So this means you can really easily optimize your campaign. So this means local performance enthusiasts was the most responsive, so you adjust the campaign to maximize your engagement. So to conclude this very brief look at digital advertising to target your audience, think carefully and critically about who you want to be targeting. You'll want to split your budget between at least 2 audience groups. And lastly, test, test, test. I know we say that with everything, but it really is the key to optimizing the way that you interact with your audiences online. I hope that made sense. I'm going to hand back over to Nicole now, who is going to be looking at email outreach. So Nicole, take it away.
Thank you, Meg. So going into email outreach, another way that we'd like to make sure we're reaching out to our clients' target audiences is through email outreach. This doesn't refer to email newsletters, which we do recommend, but to sending emails to relevant organizations to encourage them to post about your campaign. So going into the process, to do this, we like to break the process down into 3 key stages. 1, identify key organizations, create your seeding list, and get in touch. Identifying key organizations. As the purpose of your email outreach is to get your campaign in front of the right audiences, you're going to want to choose organizations that attract or engage with those audiences. To start, consider the themes of your campaign. Let's say you're promoting a play by a well-known feminist writer that explores the life of Potter in the Scottish Highlands. Your themes would be theatre, feminism, pottery, Scotland, and mountains. Then you can consider what kind of organisations might speak to my target audience already. These might be local theatre groups and theatre bloggers, feminist organisations, pottery schools, and appreciation pages, local hiking groups, and so on. Once you've identified the kinds of organisations you want to get in touch with, have a look at who's got an engaged social media presence and make a note to add them to your seeding list. Creating your seeding list and getting in touch. Now that you have your organizations, put them into a contact list, or as we call it, seeding list. Create a column for each kind of organization and include the organization's name, a summary of what they do, and any relevant campaigns they're currently running, details of their marketing contact or most relevant team member. It can also help to create a schedule of when to get in touch with who, so you can space it out. And finally, when you get in touch, you want to make sure you make a good impression. If you email someone out of the blue asking them to share a post about what you're doing, it might not go down well. Explain why you think your current campaign will be of interest to their audience and how it can benefit them. You may also want to schedule some posts supporting their activity, since your target audiences will have some crossover. Getting in touch with relevant organizations in this way can help get your campaign in front of some really targeted audiences, as well as building some positive relationships with other organizations in your sector. Moving on, hashtags. We're now going to move on to the last section of the webinar before our Q&A today, and I'll be looking at how to find the best hashtags for your target audience. First, a quick explanation of why hashtags are important for reaching your target audience. And this quote by digital marketing expert Shane Barker summarizes it perfectly. Hashtag helps users categorize and organize content. More than that, they're one of the most driving forces behind successful marketing campaigns today. Hashtag is effective because categorized content becomes more discoverable, and this is why a hashtag post will get more engagement than posts without hashtags. Hashtags will allow your post to be discovered by the right audiences, but how best to use them. If you've already looked into your audiences, following the steps Meg covered earlier, you're off on the right foot. When it comes to looking for the best hashtag to use, when starting off, the best place to look for hashtags is on the platforms themselves. If you're looking for a set of Twitter hashtags to be using for a certain campaign, look on Twitter itself. What hashtags are your peers using? what kind of hashtags are gaining attention, and make sure the hashtags you're choosing are used frequently and have been used recently. Similarly, you can use Instagram's search tool, which gives you additional information about which hashtags the people you follow use and care about. And then going on to the next point, building on this, using a hashtag generator tool can accelerate this process, whether you're looking for trending hashtags, unique ideas for hashtags, or ideal hashtags for your specific industry. A hashtag generator will do some of the hard work for you. This is just an example of a hashtag generator. Using a hashtag generator, you can use the most popular Instagram hashtags related to your search, clicking top. The random option will give you unique and creative hashtags that you've never thought before. Choose best match to see a variety of hashtags that are closely related to your original hashtag. We're not loyal to any particular hashtag generator, so if you have one that you prefer, please drop it in the chat box, as I'm sure everyone would appreciate it. Keeping a hashtag list saved. So the last point to consider is keeping a hashtag list. Once you've collected some hashtags, you'll need to think about how you're using them. A good hashtag strategy would mean your posts are being seen by more people, and likely your campaigns will be better engaged with. A post with one hashtag or more gets roughly 13% more engagement when compared to a post with no hashtags. Once you've put in the work, keeping a hashtag list makes your life easier. Create and keep a list of your hashtags, even if it's just saved on the notes or memo app on your phone. We recommend creating categories for your hashtags. If you're an art gallery in East London, your hashtag sessions might be under the umbrella of categories of contemporary art, local East London, and days out. Before sharing each post, you can refer back to your list and select a number of hashtags each time. I'm now going to pass it over to Phoebe. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Sorry, I just had to unmute myself very quickly. Thank you, Nicole and Meg, for leading the session, and thank you to everybody who's left lovely comments in the chat so far. Oh, there's another person joining just in time for the Q&A. So yeah, we're now going to open up the session to a Q&A. So please feel free to ask any questions in the chat box or over camera or just using your audio. So yeah, I'll leave you to do that. In the meantime, we had a question prior to today's session, which is in two parts. So I think we'll break it down. So we've got, what are the most cost-effective support mechanisms to use, either in live person form, a company, app, or algorithm? So just trying to understand what that question is asking. I believe it's asking what platforms you can use to help you do all of the above. So when it comes to scheduling your posts, we like to use platforms such as Hootsuite and Sprout Social. In terms of generating insights, those platforms are useful, as well as getting those insights natively. So looking at Instagram Insights, Facebook Ads Manager, Google Ads, Twitter Analytics, and all of those kinds of things. And in terms of a company, obviously, I can't not give HdK a shout out here. We do a lot of this work. So yeah, an agency is also a really good option to have. The second part of their question was, is there any way to get around the endless pasting in groups and tagging? So I suppose this refers to pasting posts into Facebook groups, and also tagging accounts and doing hashtags in your posts. I think there isn't necessarily a way to get around doing it, because I think it's always going to be effective. But I think what you can do is, as Nicole was saying, create a list and a strategy for how you're going to use them to make it easier for yourself. So for instance, on your seeding list, you can include all of the different Facebook groups that you want to post in, and then you can copy and paste any posts that you want to share in there directly into there, and it makes it much quicker for you. And the same can be said of hashtags. If you know, like, I'm going to post about this specific theme in the campaign that I'm doing, I'll copy and paste this group of hashtags, and I know that that will serve me well, provided I add in a couple that are specific to the post. So yeah, I think rather than ways around it, it's just kind of like hacking it so that it's easier for you and quicker on a day-to-day basis. So thank you for that question. I don't have the name of who submitted that, but thank you very much. We don't have any questions yet. Obviously feel free to leave any, but in the meantime, I will move on to our next webinars. And of course, as I've said that, we've had 2 more questions come up. So Vera, thank you. Yeah, so Meg's answered this. The recorded session will be available online, and we will be sharing a link to that soon. We also mentioned looking at our followers' bios to check for recurring words. Is there a tool that can run this check, or is this something that you'd have to do manually? Meg, is this the one that you want to answer?
Yeah, so this is the website that I mentioned earlier, Follower Wonk, which we will link at the end. But it's just, I think it's one word, Follower Wonk, W-O-N-K. That you can put in your own handle for Twitter, I believe. I don't think it does anything else. I could be wrong. Someone can correct me if I am wrong. But you can also put in your like peers or your competitors or anyone's handle, and it will do like a rough analysis. And it will give you kind of a word cloud almost, with the bigger words being the ones that are the most common. So we don't do that manually. I think it would take forever, but that's a really good tool for like a general guide. Yeah, like I said, we'll link that one. So thank you for the question. Thanks for clarifying that.
Thank you, Meg. Perfect. There's another question from Maria. So are there any inspirational materials you could share regarding increasing accessibility in social media? And I think it's a great question. And I think where we tend to get our inspiration is looking at other organizations within the arts and what they're doing to become more accessible in different ways. So whether it's using things like image descriptions, or whether it's through the representation that they have in their visual assets, it's always really inspiring to see how other people are doing it. I think off the top of my head, I can think of one example. I don't know if anybody else has any others, so please feel free to either drop them in the chat or Meg and Nicole. But there's a publication called Galdem that is quite good on their accessibility. So always good to have a look at what they're doing and how they're presenting their content. Yeah, I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts. Let's have a look. Oh yeah, so a question from Nadia. Do you have any training on newsletter marketing and segmenting audiences? I don't actually think we have any existing training on this at the moment, but it is something that we do on a very regular basis. And as Meg mentioned, we're currently developing some bespoke training sessions. So if that's something that you would be interested in, please drop us an email. Our email is in the slide now. It's hello@wearehdk.com, and we can have a chat about developing a training session bespoke to you. Another question from Maria. So what is the strategy of reaching people with disabilities on social media? So great, this is another question about accessibility. And one that I think is getting asked much more frequently. Sorry, I've just scrolled up and I've completely lost that question. Perfect, I'm back. So yeah, like I said, I think it's staying on top of the current functions that are available on all of the platforms and making sure that you're making the most of them. So if you need to add alt text, make sure that you're doing that with every single post. With your videos, are you able to add subtitles or a sign interpreter? I think it's just about researching the accessibility issues that are apparent on social media and just embedding it in your strategy that you're committed to overcoming those and removing those barriers between your campaign and people with disabilities. Again, please comment if you have any thoughts on any of these questions. It's always great to hear from our peers within the sector, so let us know what your thoughts are. This is a good question from Emma. What are the costs of Facebook ads? I don't know if you want to answer this one, Meg.
What are the costs of Facebook ads? Yeah, good question. So something that is really, really great about Facebook ads, and actually probably answering one of the questions that we had earlier, you get out what you put in. So you can do a trial period. Say your budget is, it can be as little as, £50 for entire campaign. You can set the spend to be, for example, you run it for 3 days to test which audience you like. You can just spend £10 between those 3 audiences, and then you can pause the campaign and spend the rest of the money. So, we have campaigns at the moment that go from anywhere between, £100 spend on something, a couple of grand, to obviously much higher. So it is, I would say, I find Google ads a little bit less user-friendly. That might just be a personal thing. But Facebook ads, I find really quite user-friendly, particularly once you've given it a go. We would recommend probably doing it with a small budget first to try it out, test out how you get on and whether you can, make sense of the metrics and things you get back. But yeah, it's completely up to you. So I would say Facebook is a good one to go with.
Yeah, great. And I just reflect that, to be honest, and I think Facebook ads, if you're running them yourself, there's no fee for setting them up. The spend goes entirely into your ad. So it's kind of, how much room do you have in your digital marketing budget? And is that something that you want to try out? And we do think it's worth prioritizing it because it really helps your content get in front of those people. So yeah, fully recommend. Indra Neil has asked, is there any sites or are there any sites or resources we can refer to learn about ongoing trends that can be applied in our campaigns? Or, as you mentioned, is the Discover page the best option? And I think this is a really good question because no doubt the majority of us in here today work in digital marketing. Things are changing so rapidly, particularly with Facebook. It's hard to keep up with sometimes. So yeah, I think it's a mixture of external resources and direct experience on the platforms themselves. So we recently did a webinar on TikTok, and we were talking about how particularly for people within our sector, it feels a little bit inaccessible. It kind of feels sometimes like you're shoehorning yourself into a new platform. But I think just by being on the platform, understanding how it works, observing what new trends you're seeing come up, like what kind of memes are people sharing, what kind of content are they recreating, there is like something that can be said of that value of just being on those platforms. So I think that's one aspect of it. But there are lots of different sites and resources. Please leave some in the chat if you have any that you prefer. There are some, I find social media today quite useful. It kind of keeps you informed of the main updates. So for instance, when Facebook recently had to make some major updates due to Apple's privacy rules changing, they were really informative about that. So that was really helpful. And platforms like Marketing Week. So yeah, leave your recommendations in the chat if you have any.
Just to jump in with, sorry, I'm just seeing another question now from Nadia. Does Follow a Wonk also tell you about which of your followers' content gets the most engagement? Off the top of my head, I don't think it does, but that is one of the examples that you can actually learn quite a lot by manually going through their account. So, if a post has had 3 likes, whereas, usually they get, 20 likes, that's an indicator of something that's been really well engaged with. And we also just find if you write things down. So, you know, post with picture, or post with picture of someone smiling, got, you know, 10 likes. You will start to see some patterns, and there's every chance that that organization has noted those patterns as well and is actioning them. So yeah, making notes is a great way to sort of be tracking these kind of successes. And no worries to everyone who has to leave now. Thank you so much for coming. Yeah, sorry, back to you, Phoebe.
Thank you. No, great. And thank you to Nadia as well for the point about making content accessible using a color contrast checker is good practice, which is a mouthful to say. So yeah, thank you for that. And Nadia shared a link into the chat for resources, so that's really helpful. Oh, Charlie has asked, do you have to have a Facebook page for your company to run Facebook ads? And this is a good question, and I might need some more information from you to answer it properly. But I think, are you wanting to run ads for your organization? Is that what you're asking?
Hi, yes, so we have Twitter, we have Instagram, but we don't currently have a Facebook page. And I just wondered if it was necessary to have the links for Facebook going through there, or if we could do it without, and like creating a Facebook page.
Yeah, so I think annoyingly you do have to have a Facebook page.
Yeah, that's fine, thank you.
I came across this recently. I was trying to advertise just on Instagram through Ads Manager because you just have much better capabilities there. But yeah, we had to create a page. So
okay, amazing, thank you. Yeah, no, I think that's what I thought, and we've got like a good following, but we haven't currently got Facebook, so that's something that I can work on. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so for now I think that comes to the end of our questions, and we're at 20 past, so I think that's a good time for us to move on to the next section. If you have any more questions, please leave them. We can always catch up at the end. But next, I just want to let you know about some more sessions that we have coming up if you found today useful. So this week, if you are a member of the Arts Marketing Association, or even if you're not, they are having their 2021 conference, and HdK are leading a session on Friday morning on understanding your audiences through data. And today we looked at understanding your audiences primarily with a social media focus, whereas this session is going to look at it through a website focus. So what kinds of data is available that you can pull to help you get a better understanding of your audience and how to engage with them. Next month, we've got how to improve your website's carbon footprint, which, along with accessibility, is one of the biggest questions that we're getting asked by our web clients at the moment. So we're interested in having that conversation. And then finally, we're going to wrap up the year with a prediction of top digital marketing trends for 2022. And I think that would be a really nice kind of open discussion of like, this is HdK's forecast. What do you guys kind of see coming in the year ahead? And I think because we get a lot of different arts organizations coming along, I think it'll be really interesting to hear what other people's focus is going to be and how we see that impacting our industry next year. And you can find all of our past webinars, including the recording for today's webinar, on the webinars section of our website, and we'll share a link to that in the chat box now. So thank you. I think Nicole's going to do that. And everything also that we've mentioned today, things like the screenshots that Meg shared, that is also linked in the chat box now. Finally, if you're interested in staying up to date on all of our webinars, digital marketing resources and different updates from HdK, sign up to our newsletter, and the link to this is also in the chat. We send it once a quarter, so we don't bombard you, but yeah, it's just useful to have all of the webinars in one place, and you can kind of just sign up to them as and when you want to. But to wrap up, thank you for your participation today, all of the lovely feedback. Really love that comment from Jess, so thank you very much. And yeah, if anybody wants to stick around and say hello or ask any further questions, feel free to do so. will be here for another 5 or so minutes, and if not, then it was lovely to talk to you today, and we look forward to seeing you in another session.